all doing? Darkened ballroom in San Diego. That's just not right. That's the wrong thing completely. So what do you do? What do you do? What do you do?
I do international education.
International education. This conference is maybe the best place in all of North America to ask the question, what do you do? It's an amazing group. This conference has grown and grown, and we're at a stage where we are actually seeing the fruits of the labor. I've been at this for 30 years. This conference has been around for 10 years, and we are seeing some amazing things happening. So what we do, Wiley, what do we do? Very good. Normally, he says OPM. Normally, people say textbooks, and we do textbooks. It's about 10 or 15% of our business. We do a lot of other things, too. And I want to remind you of what we do. Basically, Wiley drives the world forward with research and education. These are two important things. These are things that make a difference in the world. We're about half research, meaning academic research or scientific research. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's the process by which research, the work of scientists, becomes science that turns into drugs or aircraft engines or new guidance systems and so forth. It's exciting stuff, and it moves the world. And we do education. That's the other half of our business, and that's the piece that most people know about us. And from an education perspective, we do a lot of different things. So if you think about Wiley, we do academic publishing, research publishing, and we do platforms. We're one of the leading research publishers in the world. In addition, we have one of the leading platforms for research dissemination, and in fact, over half the world's research flows through Wiley's platforms to the people who are going to use it to create the future. On the education side, we have our traditional content businesses. And those content businesses include professional content, career-focused content that gets sold through certainly academic channels into the higher ed channel. They also get sold through corporations and through trade channels so that people can help themselves. We're a broad company. And who do we do it for? We do it for 4 constituents, 2 customers and 2 partners. We work with researchers and learners. Our job is to empower research and learners to achieve their goals in an ever-changing world. But in order to do that, we have to partner with others in the ecosystem. We have to partner with universities. We have to partner with corporations, because those are the people that have a vested interest in the outcome of the work of the researchers and the learners. So we talked about what. We talked about who. The question is, why? It's easy to look around the world at the state of situation today and become dejected because the situations out there is bleak. Income inequality, illiteracy, the ravages of illiteracy, intolerance, war, climate change, things that threaten our fundamental existence. So I wouldn't blame you if you weren't optimistic, even though you're at a conference that's all about optimism. I wouldn't blame you if you felt a little bit depressed or dejected. But take a minute and think how far we've come. Look back 50 years, or 100 years, or 150 years. When Wiley was founded in 1807, 12% of the world was literate. Today, that number's 83%. In 1960, the life expectancy worldwide was 56 years old. Today, 72 years old and increasing. In the 1990s, the poverty rate around the world was 36%. Today, just a few short years later, it is now below 10%, the lowest rate ever. In 2015, there were 41 cities of the world that generated over 70% of their power from renewable energy. 4 years later, that number is 101 cities worldwide. So it's working, right? There is some reason for optimism. You could actually look around and feel like things are getting better. We have more college graduates coming out every year than ever in the history of the world. So what's wrong with this picture? The answer is, it's not enough. We look around and we see the problems. The people in this room, the people at Wiley, the people at this conference, it's not enough. We're not here just to move widgets. We're here to change the world and change the world for the better. We know we have to make more progress, and we know we have to do it fast. So when the world wants to improve its lot, it invests in two things. It invests in research and invests in education. These two things are the twin engines that had powered human advancement through the ages. The world invests in research and education because they work. The world invests in research and education in higher numbers every day, every year, every decade. It goes up. Unfortunately, the spoils are not spread evenly. So here you see some developed nations, and clearly China's on a run. But if you look at the research intensity, R&D spending as a percentage of GDP, you see some familiar names on there. And it's kind of interesting to see the nations and who's investing a lot as a percentage of GDP and who's investing less. But who's MIA? The developing nations. It's not spread evenly. So on more familiar turf, education works the same way. So a few years back, this Kruger created this. It's called the Gatsby curve. And the Gatsby curve basically says that your ability to advance economically is tied to your educational mobility. Said another way, if you have the opportunity to get more education than your parents got, you will likely do better. You will move up in your stature, in your class, in your success. And you see that this is not a surprising distribution. You see developed nations like France, Sweden, Finland, where everybody has access to education, and therefore people from less advantageous situations can wind up moving up in their lives. You look down the lower left and you see some countries like Bolivia or Rwanda, where a child's education is completely determined by their parents' education and they're stuck. You see some names that are missing. Canada, our friends to the north, are doing great. Japan, UK, not so. US, bit troubling. Turns out we don't have the educational mobility, and thus we don't have the economic mobility that we might have had. So the answer to many is more education. And more education is a big part of it. There's no question about that. A lot of people think this is new, the last year, the last 10 years, so maybe since A Nation at Risk in 1983. Turns out Truman wrote a report, or Truman's administration wrote a report in 1946, calling into question our educational system and calling for a doubling of college graduates, a system of community colleges, increased federal financial aid, all things that we put into place. My guess is if you look at Lincoln's desk or Washington's desk, they were talking about increasing access too. I bet the Pilgrims were. Why? Because education works. So, has it worked? We are graduating people from college in record numbers. In the United States, the curve is quite stunning over the last 50 years. So it seems to be working, right? Maybe. So if we look at the educational system, let's ask ourselves, is the system working? So let's look at the system in its most basic components. You have institutions of higher ed on the left. You could be high schools as well, could be other sorts of institutions. You have corporations on the right. On the one side, you have supply, and on the other side, you have demand. And in the middle is the learner, or the worker. On the one hand, institutions committed to supply keep pumping out more and more graduates. On the other hand, corporations keep searching, but not having too much luck finding the right employees. So institutions, 5 million graduates a year in the United States. We spend $600 billion, and we have amassed $1.4 trillion in student debt. So we have a lot of graduates, but we also have a lot of debt and a lot of frustration. On the other side of the equation, that should be making our corporations very happy. Is it making our corporations very happy? We have 7 We have Phil Collins. Here we go. I got a soundtrack. It's good. Everybody should have a soundtrack. I wasn't quite ready for the punchline, though. Anyway, our corporations report 7 million job openings, 5 million graduates, about 5 million unemployed people, 7 million job openings. They're not finding the graduates they want, so they're spending on it. And corporate's L&D spending, learning and development spending, has been going up dramatically. And a lot of people at this conference have benefited from that spending, $45.6 billion. Yet we have 50% more jobs than qualified candidates, according to Burning Glass data. You got CEOs and companies all over the country and all over the world that are frustrated that they can't get the employees they need, the team that they need in order to succeed. So on the surface, it seems to be working. Hell, we got a 3.7% unemployment rate. What's to complain about there? The problem is that we have a 41% underemployment rate. The human capital that is being wasted in that 41.5% is staggering, and we cannot tolerate it. It's not good enough. We have to do better. So is the system working? I don't think so. I think access is good. I think access is important. We're all committed to it. But access alone will not solve the problem. More graduates doesn't solve the problem. So you hear a lot about the employment gap, and that's really the foundation of what we're here to talk about. So, if access isn't enough, what will make it work? How can we bridge the supply side of universities who keep pumping graduates out into the world, many with important skills, but apparently not all the right skills, with demand, meaning corporations who have certain needs, employers who have certain needs in order to advance? The answer is what we're calling at Wiley the opportunity Hyperloop. So it starts with access, but it goes well beyond. We need to do more. We need to get the right education into the right hands, at the right time, in the right price points, in the right levels, and so forth, targeted at the right skills. And that's what we as a company are 100% focused on. So let's look at that system again. We got our institutions, our universities, we got our corporations or employers. We got our learners in the middle. And for years, this industry, the industry that I've participated in for 30 years, has focused on two things on this equation: the left side and the right side, not the learner. We've focused on inputs versus outputs. We've focused on getting enough graduates, not getting the right graduates. So if you're trying to optimize a process, what you want to look at is the customer. And the customer here is not the institution or the corporation. We don't need to help institutions improve their performance unless it is helping learners. We do not need to help corporations do better L&D if it's not helping learners be more productive in their jobs. So there's the learner. So the first thing we need to do, Hyperloop rule number one of 4 if you're writing them down, is it's all about the learner. And that's not what this industry has been about. But we at Wiley are about the learner. The learner is our North Star. Make no mistake, we love our corporate partners, and we serve them very well. We love our institutional partners, but they are partners. Our customers, our end users are these learners. And the first question we have to ask is, what do I want to achieve? What does the learner want to achieve? And how can we help the learner achieve the learner's goals? That's our job. So instead of being process-centric or institution-centric, let's be customer-centric. That sounds familiar, right? A learner has goals. The learner wants to become the learner of the future who has career success. So what does the learner want to do? Does the learner want a college degree? Sure, but why? Because they want a job. They want a high-paying job. They want a job that affords them to have a family and buy a home. They want a job that can allow them to aspire to higher things, like changing the world. So let's start with those goals, understand those goals, and then track all of our way over to career success. And our partners, the institutions, and our partners, the corporations, are just that. They're partners in our goal to get this to happen better and faster. Now that journey from the me today to the me of tomorrow has some challenges in it, because it's not an easy world. If it was, the old system would be working just fine. We have to recognize this is a lifelong journey, and that requires strong education ROI, or what Mike and Deb like to call ROE, return on education. There's a need for hard skills, to be sure, and we're focusing a lot on that. There's also a need for soft skills. If you don't have the soft skills, you're not going to succeed in the long run. In fact, employers say that the #1 problem is not finding the hard skills. They can find those, they can even build those. It's the soft skills, the communication, the problem solving, the interpersonal skills, the grit, the determination. This lifelong journey is going to have rapid disruption in it, so you need to keep going on and on and on. Longer careers, more career moves, cost pressures, so you really need to focus on where you're spending your money if you're going to get good ROI. So it's a loop. It's a loop from me to the me of the future, and then there's a half-life where the skills and dispositions that I have today will decay until we come back to the beginning and we need to do it again. And that cycle is going to happen faster and faster and faster and faster. So what does that mean to us as Wiley? It means fundamentally we are learner-centric. It also means we're career-focused. We're organizing everything we're doing now around careers, the high-growth careers, the careers with the difficult skills to gain, the hard skills and the soft skills, and we're building that into our product. So instead of being about a textbook, we're about a career. Instead of being about test prep, we're about a career. Instead of putting asses in seats in an institution, we're about the careers that those people will have on the other side. An example for us is, for a long time, we've been a leader in accounting and accounting content. Now that's important, it's good. Does an accounting student want to learn that content just for the sake of it? No, they want to learn it because they want a career. So what we're doing is we're taking our leading content and leading content, textbook content, coursework content, and we're pairing it with our leading CPA test prep product. We're building them together inside of our Wiley Plus platform, and we can now, for the first time, deliver not just did you do good on the test, but are you prepared to pass the high-stakes exam that will result in you getting a certification, that will result in you being able to get a job with that certification and advancing your lot. That's being learner-centric. We have examples of that all over the company. Second rule. It's not just about access, it's about outcomes. And that last example shows that. We need measurable outcomes in everything we do. We need to focus on the in-demand skills because those are the ones that will pay the best and those are the ones that employers want the most. Those are outcomes. We need career success versus degree volume and hard skills versus soft skills. So what does that mean to us? So we have a little growing company called the Software Guild. It's a boot camp. It's not just a boot camp, it's a boot camp that partners with universities and partners with corporations in order to provide the tech skills that people need in order to succeed, to bridge, literally bridge, from education to career. Partners on both ends. That allows you to be outcome-oriented, not just serving the institution, but serving an institution and the employer, and thus serving the learner best. Todd Zipper, who's in the room, is building this business. Number 3, interoperability. This is critical. If we're talking about bringing together supply and demand who've almost never talked to one another before, we have to align on what we're trying to accomplish. And that ain't so easy. So we're trying to bridge supply and demand, but we need to do it by defining outcomes, outcomes that are common, so that when I come out of school with a degree, that degree has the outcomes that the employer wants. It's not so easy to do, and it's almost never done. It's starting to be done more over the last few years as we move to more to competency-based education, but this has to be the core of it, and we have trouble doing it right now, even once, let alone on a recurring regular basis, because the skills are changing all the time. The skills change almost every day that an employer needs, so we can't just define it once, we have to define it on an ongoing basis. So what do we need for that? We need a common taxonomy. We need to know how to talk about skills, and not at the meta level. Like in the government data for skills, computer programmer is a job. I don't know any computer programmers. I know Java guys, I know SQL guys. I know people that are expert in Agile. I know product managers and project managers. I know architects. I don't know any computer programmers. So We need a taxonomy to do that, and we need to use it to build toward real jobs. So what does that mean for us? Well, the first thing it means is we're working with data from sources like Burning Glass, in order to develop that common lexicon so that we can, on an ongoing basis, evaluate the jobs, evaluate our programs, evaluate our textbooks, and make sure we're driving toward the outcomes that the world needs. So interoperability is instantiated here by what we're doing at our Wiley Education Services group, where we are using such data to build out toward outcomes and have those outcomes be constantly updated. And we're not just working with our fantastic partners, of which we have over 60, groups like Johns Hopkins, like George Mason, who's in the room. Not George himself, he's actually not so well these days. But George Mason, like Michigan State, and damn it, we would have done much better this fall if they had won in the semis and gone to the finals. But that's a different story. Anyway, and we are partnering as well with our corporate partners in order to, again, deliver education with the right skills and make that education and the credential that the person has interoperable across a number of places. Another example, this is a smaller example, but it's one I like a lot. We are participants in a project called DARE, where we are literally taking data and analytics requirements from around the world and creating the outcomes and partnering with some great companies and with ASU in order to deliver fundamentally a new curriculum, new programs, and so forth for the needs of tomorrow. Finally, number 4, fill the demand curve. What does that mean? It's not about a single thing called a degree at a single price point. You don't have to get a degree from this school or that school, much as my daughter told me she had to go to Williams, at a very high price point. It's about getting the right education in the right chunks to the right people at the right time. And over the course of someone's career, they will have a variety of educational opportunities. We have a variety of pathways that we can get, a variety of products, from full degrees down to stackable credentials due to on-demand learning from a source where it doesn't add up to anything, but you know it's the right thing. So a full range of products at a full range of price points in a full range of business models, which we're doing throughout our business. We're working on ways to get all of our products to people as cheaply as we can. So you need to fill the demand curve in order to meet the needs, because the fact of the matter is institutional education isn't what it's all about. It's about institutional education, it's about corporate education, there will always be, and it's about self-advancement, where the learner himself or herself takes control of their career. An enormous part of what we do is literally delivering direct to the consumer. And we do it in some beautiful digital ways with some wonderful platforms, like our Wiley Efficient Learning platform. We do it in some pretty prosaic ways through our trade publishing group, where we're providing literally manuals. We do the dummies guides. If you think that's not on-demand important education, then you should see our sales numbers. So we have a broad range across Wiley. And just as important, we're building a network effect. We are partnering with universities and institutions all over the world. We are partnering with corporations all over the world. We are partnering with channels. We're partnering with anybody that will work with us, and we're bringing them together, because whether we get a student because they signed up to go to Johns Hopkins, or whether they're in a class at Wisconsin, and they're buying one of our books, or they're going online to get a test prep product so that they can learn a new technology skill or an accounting skill or business skill. We don't care where you come from. We care, once you come into our world, that we're as useful as we can be to you, the learner. That network effect is the power of Wiley. So this is what we're doing. We're building it into everything we do. We suggest that everybody around here builds it into everything we do and stops just focusing on the outcome, on the output of the degrees. And who are we doing it for? This is really the why. We're doing it for the young, striving learner who's trying to get through an education in order to get a first job, to embark upon a new career. We're doing it for the single mother who's studying at night while the kids are asleep. We're doing it for that mid-career professional struggling to stay relevant in a world that's changing faster and faster and faster. This is the who, it's also the why. So Wiley opened its doors in 1807. It was a print shop. That print shop soon became a bookstore. The bookstore became a publisher. Pretty soon we were publishing authors like Dickens or Melville and Poe. But as we went through the 1800s, we started to focus on academic content as the technology revolution of that century changed the world, because that's what was needed. And today, we are a broad-based company focused on the twin engines that power the global economy, that power human advancement, and we're doing it through content, for sure. We're a publisher, and we're proud of it. We're doing it through tools and platforms. We're doing it through services and delivery, and in places, we are a full-stack education provider, and I've talked to you about a number of those examples today. Stuck. Well, so you'll have to look at this slide for the rest of the presentation. Wiley empowers researchers and learners and corporations and institutions to achieve their mission-critical goals in an ever-changing world. That's what we do. What we do matters. What we do matters because what we do matters and what you do matters. Everybody in this room, because we're advancing this equation. What we do matters and what you do matters because what researchers and learners do every day can and does change the world. Thanks.